recognize the member for Regina Walsh Acres.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, March 3rd to 9th has been proclaimed Engineering and Geoscience Week in Saskatchewan. Engineers and geoscientists are integral to the safe development and maintenance of the infrastructure and technology needed to help keep our export-based economy competitive and improving our quality of life here in Saskatchewan. Mr. Speaker, all of us have enjoyed the important work of these professionals, whether it's traveling on the highways, crossing a bridge, or entering a building. Mr. Speaker, the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Saskatchewan, or APEGS, is the governing body responsible for the over 10,000 members in the province and have organized various activities to commemorate this week. APEGS members make significant contributions in a number of important sectors, including agriculture, construction, forestry, manufacturing, mining, transportation, and resources. Engineering and Geoscience Week is an opportunity for us to recognize the significant contributions these professional men and women continue to play in designing the future of our province and for making sure our citizens can get to the vital services they need. Mr. Speaker, I ask that this Assembly recognize Engineering and Geoscience Week and the dedicated professionals for their innovative and creative contributions to our province. Thank you. Hear, hear.
Recognize the member for Regina Walsh Acres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise in the House today to recognize a recent report by the Conference Board of Canada, which highlights Saskatchewan's strong economic future and prospects going forward. Hear, hear. Mr. Speaker, the Conference Board's winter 2013 Metropolitan Outlook forecasts our gross domestic product to grow to 3.4% in 2013 and 3.5% in 2014, which is the fastest projected expansion within the Dominion of Canada. Wow. Mr. Speaker, this report also projects growth in many of our industries, including potash, uranium, construction, transportation, and manufacturing, which also leads to projected employment growth. Mr. Speaker, Saskatchewan is now the place to be, and international migration to our great province is forecasted to grow, which would add to our current record-breaking population growth. Our province's two largest cities, Saskatoon and Regina, are projected to continue impressive GDP growth into the future, which is on top of tremendous growth over the past few years. This Conference Board report shows that Saskatchewan is moving forward and will continue to be a great place to live, work, and raise a family. Mr. Speaker, I'll ask all members, including the -9, to join me in recognizing this report, which highlights the economic strengths and future prospects of this great province. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
75-minute debate.
Steinley.
I recognize the member for Regina Walsh Acres.
Pay attention over there now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure for me to join in the debate today as we talk about and commend our government for policies such as balanced budget, low taxes, a stable royalty regime, which has led to record unemployment rates and a nation-leading economic growth, Mr. Speaker. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank the NDP caucus researchers for writing the questions for the member from Rosemont, because they tie in nicely to my debate for the next 15 minutes, so I want to thank them for that. Mr. Speaker, there's some points that, you know, growing up on the farm in southwestern Saskatchewan, we listened to the radio when we were on the tractor, and we always heard Paul Harvey in the rest of the story. So, Mr. Speaker, the member from Rosemont gave us half the story today on question period, and the finance minister tried to fill me in on the rest of the story, and I think it's up to me as representing the people of Walsh Acres to finalize the rest of the story and let him really talk about what the C.D. Howe Institute report actually said about our government's accounting principles. So, Mr. Speaker, I'll read from the C.D. Howe report for a couple minutes here and say that over the past 10 years, Canada's senior government has spent around $53 billion more than they had originally planned for the spring, with the prairie provinces and territories being the worst offenders. But it goes on to say, encouragingly, however, the tendency to overshoot in both spending and revenue was less pronounced in the second half of the decade than in the first half. And Mr. Speaker, I'm no mathematician, but for 10 years I believe that the former NDP government was in power for 5 of those first 10, and I think we were in power for the last 5. So it's nice that the C.D. Howe report comes out and confirms the fact that most people in Saskatchewan realize that over the last 5 years our government has done a much better job in budgeting and a much better job in spending the money of the taxpayers of Saskatchewan. So I'd like to say thank you very much to the C.D. Howe report for that endorsement. Mr. Speaker, the C.D. Howe report goes on to talk, as my colleague from Regina Rosemont probably does know, and states Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia also get an A for preparing their budgets and public accounts on a common accounting basis. And it's been a long time, well, a while since I've been in school, Mr. Speaker. My colleagues, some have been out of school a little bit longer, but 30 years, my colleague from Mooshaw-Waccamaw says. But I think an A is a quite high mark, and I don't think you can get much higher than an A, and for the C.D. Howe Institute to be giving us an A for preparing budgets and public accounts, I think. Thank you very much. The member from Athabasca says A is a high mark. I don't know if he got too many, but I think he might have recognized some on his siblings' report cards. Mr. Speaker, and last but not least, I would like to talk about a table found on page 6 of the C.D. Howe report, Mr. Speaker, and it talks about Saskatchewan and for budget presentation consistent with public reports, Mr. Speaker. It says, yes, the budget figures match, and that's an A for Saskatchewan. Mr. Speaker, our grade for the use of reconciliation tables and figures, explanations of deviations, placements in the document, Mr. Speaker, says, good use of reconciliation tables, detailed explanations for variation, results appearing at the beginning of the document. Mr. Speaker, that grade is an A. Mr. Speaker, 2 out of 2 A's, that's not too bad. And the member from Regina Rosemont tends to spin and likes to spin a little bit of the relationship we have with our auditor, Mr. Speaker. But we went through this table and it says the date of audit approval, and that's when the auditor goes through and approves the budget for the provinces, Mr. Speaker. And ours is June 14th, 2012. That's actually the earliest approval of any budget by an audit approval in the Dominion of Canada, Mr. Speaker. So I think that that's a pretty good recognition of how the C.D. Howe report presents our budgets and how they feel we do in budgeting, Mr. Speaker. And I guess he talks about the Pinocchio Award a fair bit. And I just want to make it clear for everyone out there watching, I know there's a lot of people watching right now, I want to make it clear that the Pinocchio Award is given over a 10-year period. The first 5 years of that 10-year period was the NDP government. The last 5 years was our Saskatchewan Party government. And the C.D. Howe says that the last 5 years, budgeting has been done a lot better, a lot more consistent, and a lot clearer than the first 5 years of that 10-year report, Mr. Speaker. So I hope I could clear the air a little bit with that demonstration of how the C.D. Howe actually feels we report our budgets in Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our population is now at an all-time high, 1,086,564. I'm going to throw a few numbers at you and then kind of go back and talk about them in a second, Mr. Speaker. Our population has grown by 23,000 people in the past year, making Saskatchewan the second fastest growing province in Canada. The province's population has now increased for 26 consecutive quarters, and in the past 6 years, Saskatchewan has grown by nearly 94,000 people, the fastest and most sustained population growth in decades, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, Saskatchewan's unemployment rate stands at 4%, the lowest in Canada, and well below the national average of 7%. And this is a very true fact, Mr. Speaker, that Saskatchewan's average weekly earnings increased by 5% in December 2012, the highest growth rate among the provinces compared to December of 2011, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, employment for women increased by 5.1% to 254,000 in January, hitting an all-time high for the number of women employed in our province. Mr. Speaker, employment for men increased by 4.4% to 291,300. This is the highest level recorded for male employment in the province for the month of January, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we know that small business optimism continues to be the highest in Saskatchewan, as the CFIB have reported recently, and they report most years, Mr. Speaker, we have a high optimism rate for small businesses in our province, Mr. Speaker. Our employment numbers, coupled with the strength of our economic indicators, high average weekly earnings and optimism among our business signals that there is going to be continued momentum for our economy. And Mr. Speaker, I've been able to talk with many people across our province in the last last few years, being able to represent the Regina Wallshaker constituency, and it gives me great hope for our future. I've been able to become a part of an organization called SIPE, which is the Saskatchewan Young Professionals and Entrepreneurs, and they have thank you, member from Mishawakma. And Mr. Speaker, they have little factions all over the province, SIPE, and they're all young people that have come back to our province. I know on our board, we got 10 people on our board, Mr. Speaker, and one's come back from BC, one come back from Alberta, Mr. Speaker, and it's something that you never really saw in the 90s, and I think it had a lot to do with the philosophy, the 90s and 2000s, sorry, a lot to do with the philosophy of the government of the day, Mr. Speaker. And that can be summed up very well by one of their senior ministers that said, the more people that leave, that's a good thing because there's more left for the rest of us, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, that's a philosophy that really, when you think about it, it's no wonder that people left. And I have close family relatives that had to leave this province because they didn't think they could make a go of it. Mr. Speaker, my brother left. My two sisters had to leave the province, Mr. Speaker. Thankfully, now in our new Saskatchewan, under a government that believes that we need more people in this province to contribute to an economy, to make this economy grow, Mr. Speaker. My brother's moved back and he's in Lloydminster now, Mr. Speaker. He started up his own company, he works in the oil and gas sector. For the member from Lloydminster, it is the Saskatchewan side that he lives on, Mr. Speaker. And the fact that he's come back to the province, he's felt that he has a lot of opportunity to grow. He's working with oil and gas companies. He's a pressure test truck driver, and he's doing quite well. And Mr. Speaker, not only that, but his wife has the opportunity on the Saskatchewan side. She's opened a clothing store, and I believe the member from Lloydminster and his wife has visited the clothing store a couple times and went out with some of the fantastic wares that she's selling. And Mr. Speaker, it speaks to, they have two young children, a young family that has the courage and the optimism to go and start two businesses, Mr. Speaker, in a time when you look around the world, that's not happening in a lot of different jurisdictions in this country and in North America, Mr. Speaker. The fact that there's young people willing to take a chance and having the confidence that the economy is going to continue to grow speaks well for not only this year and the next year, Mr. Speaker, but well into the future, because we have those young people and we're not experiencing the brain drain that we experienced under the former administration in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Mr. Speaker, conveniently, the member from Rosemont brought this up about spending on budget, spending on advertising, which is interesting because I don't think he did quite the research he needed to do on budget advertising. So I'd like to put into the record some of the numbers that were spent on budget advertising previously under the old reign of terror, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to say that in 2005, 2006, 2007, the spending for the budget was $447,127. Mr. Speaker, that's a hefty amount of money to be spending on glossy brochures, as they like to say. 07-08, Mr. Speaker, the total spending for the budget advertising on 07-08 was $315,246. What? That's quite substantial, and they like to say sometimes on this side our priorities may be a little misplaced, but that's almost $1 million over 2 years for spending on a budget, which is quite substantial. So let's see what perhaps was spent in 2011-12 and 2012-13. So 2011-12, the total spending on the budget was $192,257. Mr. Speaker, 2012-13 is $101,375. Mr. Speaker, that is substantially less than what the former administration spent on shameless self-promotion, Mr. Speaker. And I think that being proper caretakers of the public purse is a thing that we're very well known for throughout the province, Mr. Speaker. And the fact that we take care, we respect the taxpayers' dollars, we want to use them in the most useful way possible, I think that's a reason why there's probably a fair number more MLAs over here than on that side today, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's a few other things I'd like to talk about, especially in our representing the seat in Regina. I'd like to talk about how through economic progress and through expansion in our fine city of Regina, and talk about how the Conference Board of Canada feels our city is going to be doing in the next couple of years, and kind of lay down the groundwork for some numbers that we think are quite optimistic, and we think that if Regina moves forward like this, we're going to be very well off and well served, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Saskatchewan's unemployment rate will fall. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, growth in Regina's gross domestic product remains strong, as an estimated 4.2% in 2012, on the heels of 2 years with the growth of being above 5%. This pace of economic expansion was much stronger than the average annual gain of 2.9% recorded in the past 2 decades. So, Mr. Speaker, in the past 2 decades, the average GDP growth in Regina was 2.9%, and for the 2 years prior to this year is 5%, and projected to be 4.2%. Mr. Speaker, that's some great economic news for the people of Regina, for the citizens of Regina, where people are choosing to live, work, and play right here in our fine city. And, Mr. Speaker, I just want to go through some of the forecasts for unemployment and for average weekly earnings for our great city, for the Queen City of Regina. Mr. Speaker, the total employment for 2010 was 119,000. 2011, 123,000. 2012, 126,000. And forecast for 130,000 in 2013. Mr. Speaker, that's a lot more people in Saskatchewan working, paying tax right here, and contributing to our great quality of life in our Queen City. Hear, hear. Mr. Speaker, the unemployment rate in Regina, 2010, 4.8, 2011, 4.7, 2012, 4, and 2013, 4.1. Mr. Speaker, that's a staggering number when you think about it. Across this country, unemployment is rising, Mr. Speaker. Unemployment at the national level is 7%. So right here in Regina, we're quite proud of our companies, our small business people that are helping put people in Saskatchewan to work and helping people in Regina have great jobs and be able to afford the type of living that they want to and a high quality of living. Mr. Speaker, just this one more thing is that sometimes we talk about the raising the consumer price index and the rate of inflation. So it would be nice to see how much wages are comparing to how much wages are going up compared to the consumer price index, Mr. Speaker. And right now in Regina, the percentage of the personal income per capita was 2007, 43,951. 2011, 46,363. 2012, 47,722. 2013 forecast to be 48,985. In 2014, I think this is a threshold that we're proud to get a hold of, is $50,663. The average person, and they always say, you don't think about the average citizen. You don't think about the average citizen. Average weekly earnings, average earnings per capita in Regina being over $50,000 in 2014. That's fantastic news, and that's something where we're very proud, and we're proud to be able to make sure that the standard of living for everyone in Saskatchewan is beginning to be high. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to read the motion into record right now, Mr. Speaker, and the motion that this Assembly commend the government for policies such as balanced budgets, low taxes, and a stable royalty regime which have led to record low unemployment rates and a nation-leading economic growth. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and of course I'll be speaking in favor of this motion.
Recognize the member for Regina Walsh Acres.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to rise in the House today and talk about a key ceremony for Habitat for Humanity that the Minister of Social Services and I was able to attend earlier this morning. Mr. Speaker, owning a home is a dream that many of us share. It represents security, a sense of belonging, and a place where we can become proud, connected members of a community. However, some families need help to achieve this dream. That is where Habitat for Humanity steps in by mobilizing volunteers and partners to build affordable homes for low-income families. Mr. Speaker, we share Habitat's vision and are proud to contribute $50,000 towards each Habitat for Humanity home. In fact, since 2009, our government has dedicated a total of $4.5 million in funding for Habitat for Humanity affiliates and chapters in Regina, Moose Jaw, Saskatoon, Yorkton, Prince Albert, Lloydminster, Nipawin, Humboldt. Together, we've built 90 homes across the province. Hear, hear. Mr. Speaker, we're not stopping there. With the 2013-14 budget, our government committed an additional $2 million to help Habitat build 40 more homes for Saskatchewan. Each Habitat partner family has to do their share of work by contributing at least 500 hours to build their home or other habitat homes. But all this hard work is worthwhile once you can say to each family, welcome home. Mr. Speaker, our government is grateful to have such a strong relationship with Habitat for Humanity. Their whole family is fantastic to work with. And we are looking forward to many more builds together which will provide homes for families and communities across our province. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Excuse me, I recognize the member for Regina Wall Shakers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and it's with a great pleasure that I rise in the Assembly today and have an opportunity to address our Saskatchewan Party government, our budget, our 6th consecutive balanced budget, Mr. Speaker. And what we believe to be probably one of the only balanced budgets within Canada, and we're pretty happy that we were able to deliver this for the people of Saskatchewan. Mr. Speaker, I too have some concerns, but most of them were raised by those members over there about how they look at the books that were handed in, and also how they can talk about how they can't support a budget that builds the first transition house for women's violence in Saskatchewan since 1985, adds more seats to transition houses in Regina and Saskatoon to help women fleeing domestic abuse, Mr. Speaker. And I think that's something where that member said he supported that, and I believe that if he really wanted to stand up for the people of Saskatoon Centre, he'd be able to support a budget that increases support to women within Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of comments made by the members opposite that I'm going to get through maybe later on in the evening, but first of all, I do have to thank the people of Regina Wall Shakers for allowing me to stand in this position today. I have some great support out there, Mr. Speaker, and I have a great support network. It starts and finishes with my wonderful wife of almost four years now, Mr. Speaker, and one of the biggest reasons why I'm going to be supporting this budget is because it sets a solid foundation for our province moving forward, and a solid foundation is very important to us because myself and my wife are having our first child in May, Mr. Speaker. And we want our children to live in Saskatchewan, raise their families in Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. And this is a budget that's going to set that as the members opposite say, kick the stone down the path for our future generations to be able to live here and not flee the province in hordes as they did in the early 90s and early 2000s, Mr. Speaker. You know, they talk about the working people of Saskatchewan, and I've had questions from the member from Regina, Elphinstone, about how I can't support the working people of Saskatchewan. And I find it very funny, Mr. Speaker, that we support the working people of Saskatchewan more than they ever did, because more people in this province are working than ever before. Mr. Speaker, you support working people by allowing them to make more money, keep more of that money in their pockets by having lower taxes, Mr. Speaker, and not by making more people leave the province, so you have to tax the people that are here more. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm quite confused how they can come across with us and ask us questions of how we don't support working people. Obviously, I don't believe, like they always say, when there's less people, there's more for the people that stay. Mr. Speaker, I think that the fundamental flaw in the idea of a party that doesn't really believe in economic growth, economic prosperity, Mr. Speaker.
It now being after the hour of 5 o'clock, this House stands recessed to 7 p.m. this evening. I recognize the member for Regina Wall Shakers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy to have a full House back after the supper hour, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to continue where I left off, but I think there's some more thank yous I'd like to finish off with because I got interrupted a bit there at 5 o'clock. So, Mr. Speaker, there's some people I need to thank, and first and foremost would be my constituency assistant, Heather Hall-Shiplack. Oh, yeah. She keeps the office running very, very well when I'm away, Mr. Speaker, and I think very much of the job she's doing, and I appreciate the fact that she's keeping the people in the constituency aware of what our government's doing. I know that we've had some calls about the budget, and people are pretty happy with the only balanced budget in Canada, and I thank her very much for her job, and we're going to be able to send out some newsletters here in the next couple of days and keep the people in Walsh Acres aware of what's going on here in the Legislative Assembly during the session. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of people within the community that have had some opportunities to build great relationships with, some seniors, some young people, first-time homeowners, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank all of them for stopping by the office and stopping by and really telling me what's on their mind and give me a feel of how they think we're doing as a government and how they think the province is moving forward, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to thank the people for putting their trust in me and allowing me to stand in my space today and give a presentation on the budget 2013. And right before I get to the budget, Mr. Speaker, once again, I know that my beautiful wife is watching out there in TV land, and I want to say thank you very much.
I think she just turned it off.
Thank you very much for putting up with me, and I know that there's a lot of time pressures in our relationship right now, and I'm going out and about in session, and especially with our baby on the way, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say thank you, and I really appreciate all the time you put in with me with my job of going to events and all the hard work you do here at the building as well. So
her burdens are heavy.
Her burdens are heavy, as my colleague from Greg Stone said, but that's just because she's 7 months pregnant. Mr. Speaker, this balanced budget is our sixth consecutive balanced budget, Mr. Speaker. And I want to start by talking about some of the investments that we've done in the great city of Regina, Mr. Speaker. And first and foremost, I want to say that we're very proud as Regina MLAs to say that we've had a strong commitment on revenue sharing with the municipalities of Regina, Mr. Speaker, and it's gone up to 161% since 2007-8, Mr. Speaker, and I think the municipality of Regina really appreciates that and the fact that they have a revenue stream that they can count on year in and year out, and it continues to go up, Mr. Speaker, and I know that the revenue sharing agreement we have right now with the city, we have a great relationship with the city of Regina, the mayor and the council, and we want to thank them for being great partners and moving forward with some of the infrastructure issues we have in Regina, Mr. Speaker, and I think one of those great projects moving forward is the West Regina Bypass. It's something where, for my constituency, is a thing that's going to really alleviate some traffic issues in the west part of Regina, Mr. Speaker, and we're very happy with the fact that we can look forward to more infrastructure investments coming in here in the future. Mr. Speaker, there's a couple more things that I think the people of Regina Walsh Acres are really going to appreciate. And I think one of the best things in this budget, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that we've had revenue sharing for education. No, sorry, Mr. Speaker. The education portion of property tax is remaining revenue neutral. And I think it's very important because this is something that affects people that are on fixed income. It affects seniors, Mr. Speaker. It affects first-time homeowners. And I think moving the mill rate from 9 to 5.02%, Mr. Speaker, is really going to help people be able to manage their finances. It's going to allow them not to have the raise in education property tax they felt under the previous administration. I know that it's a commitment we made that under our watch, Mr. Speaker, we really didn't think that we would be proud of our record if we'd have tax revolts within municipalities across our province. So our main commitment was to make sure that we kept taxes manageable, kept them low, and I think this budget once again follows through on that commitment to ensure that people realize that they can have more money in their pocket. I know in Saskatchewan the price of land assessment has gone up a fair bit, Mr. Speaker, and to allow these mill rates to stay revenue neutral is a very firm commitment we made, and I think we fulfilled that promise once again. Mr. Speaker, there's a few things I want to talk about. Being one of the younger members in caucus, there's a few things that are close to my heart, Mr. Speaker. Post-secondary education, for one. I think the post-secondary education in our province over the last 5 to 6 years has improved leaps and bounds, Mr. Speaker. And I think the fact that we've given some about 45% more income to 45% more income to universities over our first 6 years in government, Mr. Speaker. I think that speaks volumes about our commitment to post-secondary education. Mr. Speaker, we're also, in this budget, is very proud to say that we're providing $10 million for a student resident at the University of Regina. It's something where the University of Regina has asked for some infusion in capital funding, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's something that really speaks to our commitment to post-secondary education.